Hey everyone, this is David with Keiryu Rod Company, and today I'm going to talk about what rods I would recommend for you to take to the lake. So fixed line lake fishing. A lot of you might think that those two don't go together. Certainly we've all had experience in alpine lakes, smaller lakes, or lakes that are big but they're more shallow, and you can have a lot of success close to shore with Tenkara rod or compact Keiryu rods, with topwater rigs, some light nymphing rigs. That's certainly all true. But I'm talking about the bigger lakes. I'm talking about big bodies of water, deep water, lakes that probably have bigger fish. And in those situations, there's definitely a huge benefit to having the right gear, and you can have a much greater chance of having success. That's been my personal experience. First time I walked up to one of these lakes with my Tenkara rod, I felt kind of intimidated. I felt my rod was kind of puny compared to this big lake. And I kind of learned my way to where I am today with the recommendations that I'm going to make for you. So let's talk about the criteria that I think is essential in these situations. First and foremost is the length of the rod. So I would say a minimum of 16 feet is going to get you into the action in most situations. Ideally, a 5 meter, 17 and a half, 18 foot rod is going to be better. And you can go to 20 feet. You can go to beyond that, but we'll stick to 20 feet today. So that's really kind of the key criteria for the rod that you're going to use. And the reason that's so important is because I think the number one consideration when you're in these bigger water lake situations is finding the drop off, finding that spot on the lake where the water gets deep. You can see the change in the water color. You might have to walk to shore for a while to find the right spot, but once you do and you hit it with a subsurface rig, you're going to have success most of the time. In addition to that, the longer rod also will help you to cast those dry floating lines for dry flies, for dry droppers in the evening hours. It just allows you to cover a lot more water. So that's the number one criteria. Number two is the action. Because you're getting deeper, you're basically contact nymphing off of these drop-offs in these lakes. You want the action of the rod to be at least medium action to fast action. That's going to help you get a positive hook set. If you have a kind of a wimpy, floppy, bendy rod, it's just not going to work as well. You're going to frustrate yourself. And by the way, if you have that type of rod and you're on a float tube, that's even worse, because if you get into a big fish on a float tube and you have a rod that just is not fast action or at least medium action, it's going to be hard for you to bring that fish in. That rod is just going to keep bending, and it's going to be hard to lift that fish out of the water or to get it close enough. You can do it, but it's going to be a real struggle. The third criteria would be just the portability of the rod. A lot of us are going to be maybe hiking into that lake or maybe backpacking. So that is definitely a consideration. How compact is the rod? How easy is it to store with our gear? So with those set of criteria, let's look at the rods that I would recommend. Okay, so which rods would I recommend? What are the top two based on the rods that I just showed you? My number one rod, not surprising, would be the Yuyuzan 620. I think this rod just checks all the boxes. It's got great length at 20 feet. It's adjustable from 18.7 to 20. It's compact at 20.5 inches. It's balances really well. I think it's better balanced than its sibling, the 540. It's got a RFI of 6.7, which is right on the kind of the border between medium action and fast action. Kind of a nice compromise. It's definitely fast action enough to get deep into deeper water, but it can also cast floating lines really well too. So number one choice, great all around. Really the only negatives of this rod is it doesn't come with a case. For those of you who, banged your stuff up or had some experiences, you're out there backpacking and hiking, a case is always a good idea, but you can always figure something out aftermarket, or you can rig something up. But that is a consideration. The other consideration is it doesn't come with a lifetime warranty like our own rods. So parts availability is not instantaneous. We do carry parts and we will get you the parts, but in some cases it's not instantaneous. We're gonna have to order them for you. So that's just something to keep in mind. My number two rod would be the T100. The T100 is just a great, fantastic all-around rod. It is 29.5 inches, so if portability, compactness is an issue, this rod would be out. If it's not, then this is a rod that I would definitely recommend and consider. It's just proven itself time and time again. That's part of the reason why I'm picking it number two, is because it has a history of being effective at lakes over and over again. It's good in deep water. It's good for casting lines, for casting floating lines. It's a medium action. It's not as fast action as some of these other rods, but it has enough backbone to get the job done. The rod also has a lifetime warranty because it's our rod. So if anything happens, you just give us a call and we're going to ship out the part ASAP, the same day to you in many cases, in most cases. So that's kind of my top line assessment of the T100. Just a well-balanced rod and just proven performance. The other one that I would just comment on is the Keiryu, or the Keiki, as I like to call it. It's just a beautiful rod. It's not in my top two just because it's a real premium price rod and availability is pretty scarce. So if you are in the mindset that this is a type of rod, the quality of rod that you would want and it's available, then just pick it up. It's going to meet all your needs. It's going to be fantastic. It's very light. It's a great rod to go backpacking with. All right, let's talk about fishing rigs and lines that we would use. Okay, so let's talk about the lines and rigs that you may want to consider for the lake that we're talking about. So the first one is subsurface fishing. What I like to do in that situation is use a light, thin line that's going to get deep and it's going to give me a great presentation and keep me in contact with my flies. So one simple option is just to repurpose this owner line. There's two lines in here. These are tapered from about 4X to 5X. They come with a hook at the bottom. You can just cut that off. There's a little rubber split ring that you can use to attach your new tippet and then add your fly at the bottom, and then you can also use that ring to attach a tag in your second fly. These work great. Just make sure that 5X is sufficient for your needs. The other option that I have here is our Euroline. I really like this a lot. It does come with an indicator on it, an indicator line. I don't know how useful that will be on the lake. Because it's more, you might be deeper, that might be in the water, which is okay. I mean, you're going to attach, this is a 13-foot line, you're going to attach anywhere from 6 to 8 feet of tippet, depending on how deep the water is. So it's a great line, it's all set up. The other option is just to make your line. So this is a 10-pound monofilament line. You can use 10, 12, even 15-pound monofilament, and all you're going to do is just attach your tippet to this. I don't think you need to use a two-tone indicator. You can if you want. When you attach your tippet, you can use just a surgeon's knot, 2 loops, and you're good to go. And then we have braid. I do like braid. It's actually thinner and lighter than the monofilament, and it stretches less. When you attach your tippet to this, just go with 4 loops. Otherwise the attachment will not be secure. With both of these lines, I'm probably looking at maybe 12 feet of these lines, and then adding my tippet, whether that's probably around 6 feet, maybe a little bit more, depending on the situation, and that's as simple as it gets. Now, in terms of the flies that you're going to add, I do like to go with a 2-fly setup, and I like to keep things simple. My strategy here is really to go with a jig nymph as my point fly. Make sure it's tungsten weighted, so it's heavy and it gets deep fast. So I go with, here's little pheasant tail jig nymphs. This one's got some color to it. These work great. And then for my tag fly, one philosophy is just go with something that's unweighted or with very little weight that is really going to look natural. So, a little unweighted mayfly, or here is a midge. In some cases, midges are popular. A hare's ear. Keep these light and small and just kind of waving, moving about naturally above that point fly. The other option is to, complement your bottom fly here with another little pheasant tail jig nymph, and that also adds a little bit more weight, which you might need depending on the water. Or you could go something more flashy with some color to attract. The key, the strategy behind all of this is you're putting these flies where the fish are. They're not going to have to work very hard. You're presenting them with an opportunity to feed themselves, and that's what makes this so successful. So I don't overthink the matching the hatch. Certainly I'm open to suggestions and local input if I can get it, but otherwise I'm kind of relying on this type of setup. I haven't mentioned a streamer. You could do that too, and I have used these oftentimes more off of a boat for whatever reason, and they've worked effectively too. In terms of, before we talk about the indicators, there's the trout magnet. This was recommended to me, and I actually found it to be very effective. What you're not seeing here is these come with little jig head hooks that you're gonna insert right here, and that makes them sink very fast. And these are always fished under a bobber, and I've done that and it's been very successful. So hey, thank you for the customer who recommended this to me. It does work. This is the bobber that comes with it. I don't love it, but it is very visible. This is a rattling bobber, and these are just very light kind of bobbers that I use on the river, but they're also effective here as long as you can see them. I usually like transparent, but on a lake I'll often go with more color to make sure that I can see it. So my strategy with these lines is I'll typically first go without any sort of bobber, and what I want to do is I want to kind of familiarize myself with the water. How deep do I have to go? So I'm going to cast out, let my line, lower my rod until I feel like I've hit the bottom and I can gauge how deep. And at that point, I'll usually fish it a little bit without the indicator, maybe give it a little action, a little jig, and see what happens. And then I'll probably add an indicator, especially if the water is extremely still, which you often do find on lakes. Putting a bobber on there, and honestly just setting your rod down sometimes, and read your book for a few minutes, or look at your phone for a few minutes, or just enjoy the view, and just let that bobber sit there, and that has worked effectively. So it's a combination of those two, working the rod and jigging it a little bit, and then just using the bobber and the still method. Those are kind of two approaches. Here's an example of just tippet. By the way, I haven't mentioned, always go with fluorocarbon tippet, since you're subsurface fishing. And then we get to the topwater. Topwater fishing is using a floating line. These work well with Keiryu rods. They cast well with these type of rods. They actually cast well with any Tenkara rod as well too, but They work great, they're proven. You can get out very far, which is what I like about using these with a 18-foot or a 20-foot rod. You can get out to 40, 45 feet, and you can cover a lot of water. So when you see the fish rising, this is always a good option. I like dry droppers, even a chubby Chernobyl out in the lake, just to act as a bobber or indicator is a good setup. Otherwise, I'm just going to use my favorite fly, you know, maybe a Parachute Adams, and that can be very effective. So that's those are the recommendations that I have for you to consider when you're out in these type of lakes. Hey everyone, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it provided some useful tips and ideas for you. Please let me know what ideas you have, what tips you have. If there's flies that you think that we should be using, let me know. Like I mentioned, that trout magnet, a customer told us about that one. It turned out to be great. So we always want to kind of listen and take in information. That's kind of one of the philosophies of Keiryu Rod Company. We don't have any preconceived notions about anything. It's all performance-based. It's what's working in the real world and what people are telling us. Also, please like and subscribe so we can continue to do these videos and do more of them. And then finally, if there's ideas that you have about rods that maybe we should be developing, please let me know. You know, we have prototypes in the works all the time, so I'm always interested in your thoughts, and I really do take them seriously. So reach out, talk to us, comment. We're here to listen, and thanks again for watching. Have a great day.